Why are 3 out of 4 men past 60 quietly stepping away from love, from marriage, and from the search for a partner? At first, it sounds like a sad story about loneliness. Look closer, and you will find something far more complicated. For many men, solitude is not an accident. It is a decision. It is the result of scars that never healed, and it is also the result of a deep pull toward freedom, peace, and self-respect. Stay with me, because in part 5, we will reach the moment where this whole picture comes into focus. It is the part that explains why even the strongest men decide there is no safe way back to love. You will want to hear it. The hidden cost of love after 60. We grow up believing that love will carry us through every storm. Many men find that the storm can come from love itself. The cost of a relationship that breaks late in life is larger than most people know. It is not only heartbreak, it is not only paperwork, it is the slow untying of a life that took decades to build. Betrayal is often the deepest wound, when a promise feels sacred and then proves fragile. A man's sense of self is shaken. He looks at the years he gave and wonders what those years meant. He remembers the morning routines, the shared goals, the small rituals that once felt unbreakable. He does not only lose a partner, he loses the person he was inside that story. There is also the financial wound. A late-life divorce can tear through retirement plans like a storm through a quiet town. Savings are split, a house is sold. Money that was meant to protect the final chapter is suddenly scattered. For a man who has worked since youth to earn that security, the idea of risking it again feels reckless. Carefree romance is a luxury when every dollar's a shelter. Some men carry scars that never showed on the surface. They lived for years with criticism that wore them down, or silence that grew as heavy as stone. They learned to keep the peace. They learned to keep their voice soft. In time, they forgot what their own voice sounded like. When they finally step away, they do not miss the conflict, but they do miss the person they used to be before the conflict started. Consider Leonard, a 70-year-old former sales manager from Arizona. He gave 25 years to a marriage he believed would last until the end. When it ended, he did not only sign papers, he packed up his tools, left the porch he built with his own hands, and learned how to sleep in a quiet apartment that did not smell like his old life. Friends told him to try again. He listened politely and said the same sentence each time. I do not have the strength to rebuild a life that someone else can unbuild. There is another pattern that shapes the heart. It is the rhythm of repeated rejection. A message goes unanswered. A date ends with kind words that lead nowhere. A week feels hopeful and then falls silent. Each small disappointment hardens the idea that love is no longer for him. Over time, the instinct to avoid pain becomes stronger than the desire to chase happiness. He is not angry. He is simply tired. When trust has been broken, when money has been shaken, when dignity has been dented, solitude can feel like a refuge. The door closes. The mind quiets. A man tells himself, inside these walls, I cannot be hurt in the same way again. He is not choosing emptiness. He is choosing safety. Yet this is only one side of the truth. Many men do not retreat because they are wounded. They step aside because something else, something quieter, is calling their name. That is where we turn now. The pull of freedom and self-direction. There is a different kind of desire that grows with age. It is the simple wish to live on your own terms. When a man has spent decades compromising, he may finally crave mornings that belong to him. He wants a kitchen that sounds the way he likes it to sound. He wants a calendar that is not a negotiation. He wants his car to head exactly where he feels like going. Even if the destination is a lake with nothing to do there, except watch the light move across the water. The relief from constant compromise is real. Relationships are full of small negotiations that never end. Where to live, how to spend money, what to eat, when to host, which holidays belong to which family. These talks are not wrong. They are simply heavy. After a lifetime of heavy talks, silence can feel like medicine. Self-direction opens a doorway back to the self. Some men pick up the guitar that sat in the closet for 30 years. Some return to the weight room and move carefully until the body remembers how to lift. Some start a small woodworking bench in the garage and turn scrap pine into useful shapes. Some join a group at the library and talk about books without pretending to be someone they are not. The time that once went to managing a relationship can now go to building a life that fits the soul. Technology makes this easier than it used to be. Movies are one click away. Music fills the room without a complicated system. An online forum about fly fishing or model trains can keep a mind engaged for hours. A video call can carry a face from across the country to your kitchen table. It is not the same as a hand you can hold, but it is a steady stream of connection and activity that softens the edges of solitude. Think about Carl, 65, retired from the Postal Service in Michigan. His friends told him to make a dating profile. Instead, he joined a classic car club that meets every Saturday. He spends his week polishing the trim on a '67 Chevrolet and learning to tune a carburetor. When someone asks if he misses dating, he smiles and says, "I do not miss the feeling of performing. I enjoy the feeling of being myself." Here is the point. Chosen solitude is not a blank page. It can be a full page written in a different ink. It is not about avoiding life. It is about living it without constant permission. Still, there is more to the story, because the rise in male solitude is not only personal, it is also cultural. To understand the size of the wave, we need to look at the water itself. The new map of solitude across the country. The shape of family life has been changing for decades. Fewer marriages, more divorces, more homes with a single occupant. For men beyond 60, living alone has shifted from unusual to ordinary. The old assumption that a widower or a divorced man would rush to remarry is fading. Many do not. Many build a different kind of life and find that it suits them. There is an important distinction that people often miss. Some men are alone because they must be. That is forced isolation. A spouse has died. A long marriage has ended. A partner has left. The man did not choose the door that closed. He now has to learn how to live on the other side of it. Other men are alone because they choose to be. That is chosen solitude. The two lives may look the same from the street. Inside, they feel very different. Edwin, 72, lost his wife after a long illness. Everyone expected him to date when the grief softened. He did not. He started walking at sunrise, learned to cook one perfect omelet, and volunteered at the local animal shelter. When asked why he stayed single, he said a sentence that explained everything. "I have already known love. Now I want to know peace." The numbers tell us that this story is no longer an exception. It is part of a larger shift. But numbers cannot explain the pressure many men feel when they look at today's version of love. For that, we need to examine the demands of modern dating and the old script that many men still carry in their minds. The quiet battle between masculinity and vulnerability. A man grows up inside a story about what makes him valuable. Be strong, be useful, be steady, provide, protect, carry the weight without complaint. For a long time, this story gave meaning. It invited respect. It defined success. Then the story began to change. Women became more independent. Roles became more flexible. The past was not erased, but the new chapter was written with different lines. Older men step into modern dating and feel that the language has changed. Quick impressions on a screen carry more power than slow character. Charm feels louder than reliability. Youth feels more rewarded than wisdom. The old tools do not seem to fit the new task. A man can feel invisible before he has said a single word. He still believes in commitment. He still believes in patience. He is not sure the room believes in him. There is a tension inside the soul. Love requires vulnerability. It requires opening the door to someone who might not understand the weight you carry. Traditional masculinity discourages that kind of nakedness. It tells a man to reveal strength, not fear. When those two forces collide, confusion follows. Should he be open and risk being judged as weak? Should he be guarded and risk being judged as cold? Many men cannot find a middle path. They take the path that feels safer. They choose quiet. All of this prepares us for the turning point of this entire discussion. The next section is where many men decide that walking away is not only reasonable, it is necessary. If you have watched this far, do not skip what comes next. It is the heart of the matter. The breaking point. There is a moment when personal history and cultural pressure meet. At that crossroads, many older men decide there is no safe way back to love. The decision is not made in anger. It is made in calculation. It is made in self-protection. Start with the financial risk. A man who has spent 40 years building a retirement cushion knows exactly how long it took to earn every dollar. He also knows how quickly a legal process can drain it. He hears stories from friends whose pensions were divided, whose homes had to be sold, whose savings were spread thin across 2 lives. He looks at an unstable economy and rising costs. He asks himself a practical question. Can I risk the rest of my life on the hope that a new love will outlast the statistics? If the honest answer is no, he steps back. Add the judgment that still lingers around masculine identity. Even as society changes, many men feel they are measured by what they can provide. They ask, what if my body cannot lift as it used to? What if my income does not stretch the way it did? What if illness interrupts the plan? If I cannot perform at the level I once did, will I be viewed as a disappointment? Not every partner judges this way, but the fear is real. Rather than face that fear, many men choose independence, where no one will evaluate them by standards they can no longer meet. Consider Thomas, a 70-year-old retired mechanic from Ohio, twice married, twice divorced. He enjoys working on outboard motors in a neighbor's shed and teaching a teenager down the block how to change brake pads. His daughter asked if he ever thinks about dating. He answered with a sentence that sits in the chest like a stone. I do not want to be judged by what I can no longer give. I would rather be alone than called a failure. There is also the influence of online voices. Some communities encourage men to step aside completely. They tell men that modern relationships are rigged against them, that financial and legal risks are too great, that emotional vulnerability will be used against them. Not every man believes these messages. Some do, and those messages add weight to the scale. Even men who do not visit those forums still feel the atmosphere they create. The air carries their warnings. Modern dating can feel like a fast-moving river, quick swipes, short messages, rapid judgments. A man who values slow trust and steady habits may not want to enter that river. He would rather spend a Saturday at the hardware store, or at a ball game with a grandson, or at the kitchen table with a radio playing quietly while he sands a piece of cedar. He is not hiding. He is choosing a life that feels fair to his stage of life. This is the breaking point, when risk, judgment, speed, and memory all press toward the same conclusion. Solitude becomes the rational choice. It is not a statement against love. It is a statement in favor of peace. Not every man reaches this point. Enough do that the pattern is now clear. And yet, even here, the story is not simply dark. There is a path through solitude that is more than avoidance. It can be a philosophy, a way to live with dignity and depth. That is where we go next. Solitude as a thoughtful philosophy. There is a way to choose solitude that does not shrink the spirit, it expands it. A man can decide that his last decades will be devoted to the things that make him most alive. He can build a life that fits his nature, not the expectations of others. He can define wealth as time, attention, health, and gratitude. Some men create a routine that steadies the mind. A morning walk before sunrise, coffee brewed the same careful way, a short reading that lifts the heart, A few sets of simple exercises to keep the legs strong and the back stable. A call to a friend, a small task in the yard, a meal cooked without hurry, an evening of music or learning. This is not a lonely life. It is a crafted life. Purpose is the key that keeps solitude from becoming isolation. A man who teaches a neighbor's child to tie a fishing knot is not alone. A man who restores a park bench with the city crew is not alone. A man who reads to first graders on Tuesdays is not alone. Service is a bridge between the self and the world. It reminds a man that his worth was never only about providing money, it was also about providing presence. We should be honest about the risks. Long periods of isolation can harm the body and the mind. Memory can dull, mood can sink, blood pressure can rise. The line between healthy solitude and unhealthy loneliness is thin, and it is easy to cross without noticing. This is why routines of connection matter. Church groups, clubs, volunteer teams, a weekly breakfast with a friend, a standing phone call on Sunday afternoon. These are rails that keep the train on the track. When we look at an older man who lives alone, we do not know which story we are seeing. We might be looking at grief that still aches. We might be looking at freedom that finally breathes. We might be looking at both. What helps is not judgment. What helps is understanding. When we honor the path a man chooses, we give him room to breathe and grow. If you believe that every path deserves respect, say so in your own way in the comments. Your voice might help someone feel seen. We have explored the reasons men step away. We have explored the risks that push and the freedoms that pull. Let us end with a reflection that speaks directly to the heart. Final thoughts. 75% of men past 60 choose solitude. Some carry scars that never closed. Some seek a gentler rhythm. Some no longer trust the modern shape of love. Some are simply tired of compromise and ready to live with simple clarity. The choice is not always a wound. Sometimes it is wisdom. Sometimes it is self-protection. Sometimes it is both at the same time. If you are a man who has stepped away, hear this with kindness. You are not a failure for choosing peace. You are not broken for wanting mornings that belong to you. If you still wish for love, you are not foolish. Your desire is honorable. Either way, you deserve a life that feels true. Take one small action that keeps your world open. Walk with a neighbor. Call an old friend. Join a group that does something that matters. Teach something you know. Learn something you do not know. These are the small doors that keep loneliness from locking you in. Thank you for listening with an open mind. If this conversation helped you, subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who might need these words, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Tell us what you have learned in your own life. Tell us what choice has brought you the most peace. Your story could be the one that helps another man feel less alone in his own.